When everyone is watching and judging your every move. The pressure feels so real. Is this the right way? But when you know yourself and love what you do, nothing can stop you. It's your life. Do your thing. Find your way. I'm finding mine with BDO.
Today, more than ever, technology has become an integral part of our daily lives. For BPI, it has allowed us to reach out to more Filipinos across the country and the world. It has given us the opportunity to nurture relationships, provide much-needed assistance, and make lives easier and more convenient for our customers, the community, and the country during the best and worst of times. BPI gives more than just control over finances. Our products and services give confidence, security, and peace of mind. Through innovation that transforms the way we work and inspires a better tomorrow for all, so that no matter where you are or whatever it is you need, BPI has the right solution for your banking needs. As we continue to look to the future, we see stronger bonds, enduring relationships, and lasting partnerships that further strengthen our commitment to build a better nation. BPI. Ready today, ready tomorrow.
Every day, when you log into BPI, you're connected to people in so many different ways. Because now it's not just about the money. You transfer joy to family, friends, and even strangers. You exchange gratitude. Explore your passions with people who matter. Share your load or for moments worth saving. You fund your journey and go anywhere your life takes you. You go on to invest in yourself. Log into happiness, to drive, to barkada, to family, to life. Log in to BPI's next generation of digital banking.
Next generation.
Hi, I'm your digital banking assistant. How can I help you?
I see you happy. I see you proud and assured. I see you braving it out. I see you chasing your dreams. See yourself through with Critical Care 100. Enjoy a lifetime of protection from up to 100 critical illnesses with optional riders to help you go further.
ipagulong ang pangalan mong dakila at tapat. Sama-sama ating isang puso, tagumpay mo'y tagumpay nating lahat. San Miguel, ikaw at ako ay isa. San Miguel, buong mundo'y humahanga. San Miguel, habang buhay kang kararangan. San Miguel, San Miguel, San Miguel. San Miguel, ikaw at ako ay isa. San Miguel, buong mundo'y humahanga. San Miguel, habang buhay kang kararangan. San Miguel, San Miguel, San Miguel.
SM, through the example of its founder, Henry C. Sr., recognizes that business growth and social development go hand in hand. SM focuses its social development initiatives and integrates its philanthropic thrusts with an eye towards United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, focusing on the following areas: education, medical assistance, community relief operations, sustainable agriculture, micro, small, medium enterprise promotion, social inclusion, disaster resilience, environmental responsibility. SM Foundation's Kabalikat sa Kabuhayan, or KSK, aims to empower farmers and community beneficiaries to enable them to learn modern farming techniques and help them become self-sufficient. In a multi-sectoral partnership, KSK has trained over 26,000 farmers through nearly 200 farmers' training sessions conducted in close to 3,000 barangays and over 800 municipalities and cities in the Philippines. The program provides a holistic curriculum approach, identifying target beneficiary groups and promoting social inclusion, particularly among women and senior citizens. Engaging trainees in a 12-week-long hands-on training on modern yet practical farming technologies to improve the quality and quantity of their crops. Providing participants with financial literacy and business plan sessions. Promoting values formation and capacity building through workshops. And establishing linkages to local community markets and exposure to SM markets. KSK brings hope in farming, providing food security and a source of income among farmers and its community beneficiaries. SM's social development programs aim to bring about meaningful change to the people and the communities served every day.
We are Entrego. We bring your product from you to there, whenever and wherever. With business and e-commerce growing fast, we at Entrego promise to bridge the digital divide. We always deliver. We are committed to provide fast, on time, safe, and reliable logistics services for our customers. We never stop. We are enabled by the latest technology that provides full operational visibility. Our fleet is equipped with GPS mobile devices. We move forward. We are everywhere. We are committed to expanding our network through widespread distribution centers across the Philippines. We promise to take your products from you to there, wherever there is. We are ready to deliver.
BSP Governor Dr. Benjamin Jokno, Messrs. Eduardo Francisco, Paulo Azola, Emilio Neri, my colleagues at the Manila Times, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the Manila Times, welcome to today's forum, Road to Recovery, Turning Crisis into Opportunities. Our last business forum focused on the economic fallout of the COVID-19 pandemic. It is only fitting today that we turn our attention to recovery and to finding the opportunities amid the crisis that we are all facing. Of course, in looking ahead, we should not lose sight of the situation in front of us. The economic landscape is still shifting precisely because the health threat remains. Here and in other places, the number of coronavirus cases and deaths are still increasing. We expect that many of our viewers today look forward to an updated assessment of the economy. Also, not a few would probably like to ask whether a rapid or V-shaped recovery remains a possibility for the Philippines, or as we have suggested in an earlier editorial, that we should factor in the lingering presence of COVID-19 and redraft the economic outlook along with the country's medium and long-term economic plan. While our tone may sound bleak, we find consolation in believing that there are almost always a silver lining, so to speak. Would it be appropriate to heed the idea of Baron Rothschild, the 18th century British nobleman and member of the famous banking clan, who said that the time to buy is when there's blood in the streets? Perhaps our speakers today could react to this. We ourselves may not have the answers, but like in our other events, we have invited the experts to weigh in on the relevant questions of the day. The Times organizes these fora so that our readers and followers on our website, digital edition, and social media platforms may hear directly from the people supremely qualified to offer their insight, add context to complex issues, and give recommendations that are helpful to planning and other policy work. I would like to conclude here so that we may get on to our speakers today. But before I do, I would like to express my gratitude to all our speakers and reactor, particularly Governor Jokno. Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable time, as I am sure the present crisis is keeping you and your team occupied. I hope that we are able to deliver our part, which is to convey your message to the Filipino people and others around the world watching this forum. Let me say also our appreciation to those watching, and that if they may want to ask questions, they may do so by typing them in the comment section of whatever social media platform they are using to watch this. If we do not get to some of those questions, as I'm sure we'll be receiving plenty, we shall forward them later to the appropriate speaker or speakers. Finally, allow me to acknowledge all those who helped make this event possible. Thank you to our co-sponsors, BDO, BPI, BPI Philam, San Miguel Corporation, our sponsors, SM Investment Corporation, special partners, the Cagayan Economic Zone Authority, Intrego, Maybank, Paymaya, and last but not least, our media partner, the Manila Times TV. Again, welcome, and let us now move on to our keynote speaker.
Prior to his appointment as Governor of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, Dr. Benjamin Jokno was called to serve as Budget Secretary by President Rodrigo Duterte from 2016 to 2019. He was also the Budget Secretary from 1998 to 2001 under the Estrada administration and Budget Undersecretary from 1986 to 1991 under Corazon Aquino's administration. He finished his bachelor's degree in public administration from the University of the Philippines in 1968 and earned his master's degrees in public administration in 1970 and in economics in 1974 from the same university. He holds a Master of Arts in Political Economy from the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland, and a Doctor of Philosophy in Economics from the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs, Syracuse University in Syracuse, New York. His policy expertise and research contribution extend to various areas of public economics, such as structure and scope of government, tax policies and reforms, public expenditure management analysis, fiscal decentralization, national budget, and public debt. He is a professor emeritus of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, teaching public sector economics, microeconomics, macroeconomics, and development economics among others for over 40 years. He was also chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Pamantasan ng Lungsod na Maynila. He served as fiscal advisor to the Philippine Senate and chairman and chief executive officer of the Philippine National Oil Company and chairman of the Local Water Utilities Administration. Besides his stints as advisor and consultant to various multilateral agencies such as the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Commission, and the United States Agency for International Development for work in a number of Asian countries, including the Philippines and China, Dr. Joknos also authored several publications and discussion papers regarding his research interests that have been published in academic journals and policy reports. Among his notable policy reform contributions include the 1986 Tax Reform Program, which simplified the income tax system and introduced the value-added tax, the What You See is What You Get policy, which streamlined the release of funds, and the Government Procurement Reform Act, which brought modernization, regulation, and standardization of government procurement activities.
When the coronavirus crisis broke out in the country, the government had and continues to have adequate fiscal and monetary policy space, which it immediately deployed to calm down the market and ease liquidity pressures. Last Thursday, the Monetary Board cut the policy interest rate by 50 basis points. For its part, the BSP promptly implemented measures to ease liquidity and sustain the flow of credit that have calmed down market jitters. Recognizing the importance of MSMEs in the economy, the BSP allowed banks to include new MSME loans as part of their compliance with the required reserve ratio. The credit risk weight of MSME loans that are current in status was temporarily reduced, while MSME loans with government guarantee were assigned zero weight. These policy measures are aimed at encouraging more lending to MSMEs. But our optimism is also tempered by a sense of realism that there are still much work to be done. We have a good head start with the economic and regulatory buffers we built over the years. But this can be easily eroded given the huge resource requirement of the crisis response measures. As we reopen the economy, we remain vigilant because the risk of COVID-19 remains high. We continue to maintain a disciplined approach to policy, coordination, and decision-making. The crisis has exposed the vulnerabilities and gaps in existing processes and systems that we need to swiftly deal with to recover lost momentum because of this pandemic. So let me expound on four critical structural imperatives that I believe are opportunities for growth that we should seize. First is the modernization of the country's health system to ensure efficient public health infrastructure and resilient crisis preparedness framework. This would require giving incentives for the use of science and technology in health policy decision-making. It would require overhauling of the healthcare supply chain management. The government must also initiate the formulation of a national preparedness and response framework for disease outbreaks and pandemics, taking into account coordination gaps across different levels of government. Second is the need to upgrade the information and communication technology, infrastructure system, and processes. Technology will play a pivotal role in reshaping the means of production and the delivery of goods and services in the post-COVID world. Digital technology will also be critical in enabling simpler and more efficient transactions with government agencies. Business transactions such as online retail, online banking, online medical consultations, and digital payments will become a necessity. All this need to be supported by a safe and reliable digital infrastructure system with robust and dependable cybersecurity protection. Third is the modernization of Philippine agriculture and the government's supply chain management system with the aid of digital technologies. This will help ensure that food and other essential goods and services are available, accessible, and affordable. Fourth is the development of a highly skilled and resilient workforce by strengthening the educational system, sustained upskilling, and adequate health protection to future-proof our workforce. Former US President John F. Kennedy once said, and I quote, "The Chinese used two brushstrokes to write the word crisis. One brushstroke stands for danger, the other for opportunity. In a crisis, be aware of the danger, but recognize the opportunity." The COVID-19 crisis is so unprecedented that we shouldn't let it go to waste. There are important lessons for government moving forward. This once-in-a-lifetime health crisis emphasizes the importance of building sufficient buffers during good times. It likewise highlights the need to quicken the modernization of the country's ICT infrastructure and policies. The list of reform possibilities is longer than what I have offered. There are deep learnings that we should collectively heed if we are to rise above the crisis and forge ahead toward the goal of a stronger, fairer, and more inclusive society. Thank you and good day.
Bank of the Philippine Islands lead economist Emilio Neri Jr. was voted as the #1 best equities economist and #2 fixed income economist by the Fund Managers Association of the Philippines in 2019. He was also ranked #1 among the local economists by the Department of Finance as having the most accurate gross domestic product growth projections from 2016 to 2018. The research team he heads consistently ranks at the top of survey for analysts conducted by Bloomberg, Asia Money, and The Asset. Prior to his stint in BPI, he served as economics and banking sector analyst for a former Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Monetary Board member. He is currently the president of the Philippine Economic Society and was a consultant at the Asian Development Bank and senior economics researcher and lecturer on monetary and fiscal economics at the University of Asia and the Pacific.
Welcome, Mr. Neri.
The bright spot for the Philippines is it is closely linked with the ASEAN, which in turn is closely linked with China's merchandise trade. As you can see in the slide to the left, which is PMI across major economies, China's manufacturing recovery is way ahead of these other developed economies by at least 3 months. Whereas everybody else is still in contraction, of course by less in May than in April, China is already in expansion mode as far as manufacturing is concerned. Now, if you look at the right side of my slide, you will see that the ASEAN has actually become China's largest trading partner since early 2020. We overtook the European Union. This means that the ASEAN manufacturing sector has a big likelihood of being able to recover early. So let me just very quickly summarize those 3 bright spots. The low interest rate environment, together with abundance of liquidity in a time of crisis, is actually very timely and forceful enough on the monetary side. Second, we can capitalize on our trade and other linkages with ASEAN and China. So that PMI is, because it's contracting less in our region, will be an advantage in the near to medium term. And then finally, the Philippines has probably the strongest potential for a consumption rebound.
Ben?
Yeah, I have one burning question, and I think it's probably something that a lot of people are interested in. you made a big point about ICT infrastructure, and even before we can think about recovery, it's become so important because everybody is trying to do their job online, do their business online. I know the BSP has put a lot of effort into digital payment systems and things, most of which work really good. But the ICT infrastructure seems to be a huge obstacle for this country, and it's really become critical now with the way our economy and our way of living and doing business has changed. What would be, from your perspective, what would be your recommendation to get that moving, to get that investment happening, and start to see some real improvements? I mean, how long has the country been waiting, for that to get better?
Yeah, I understand that the major constraint here is the broadband capacity, and that will be solved soon. I think Facebook has an infrastructure that will cut across Luzon, and they will quadruple the broadband width in the country. Now it's up to the bureaucracy, the Department of the ICT to work double time, triple time to keep us to the level we want to be. As you know, my goal at the BSP is that by the end of my term, 50% of all financial transactions should be digital in volume and in value. And that I said that even before the pandemic. I think we're going to accomplish that sooner than 2023 because of what happened.
Because we'll have to.
Because we have to, yes.
We'll just ask for some final words or thoughts from, beginning with our reactor, then from the governor. Missionary, your final thoughts?
Well, again, thank you for inviting me today. I guess I'll just try and urge people to try to use the digital space and use e-commerce more. There are huge opportunities there for everyone. We're hoping, aside from being able to pay utilities and able to do small business in digital platforms, maybe we can even register our vehicles and be able to do some of the governor's suggestions earlier, so that it will be easier for people to avoid the virus, not having to line up for registration or a driver's license. And we are here, the private financial institutions are here to help you once that is made available. We're pretty confident Ed Francisco is here, and he will probably emphasize that point later on again, that we are here and available for you to be able to use our infrastructure. We had birth pains last year, but now we're actually quite strong in the digital area. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Your last words, and I must say that it gives me some confidence just seeing you so composed and so relaxed. So I mean that's I think speaks volumes as well. But sir, your final thoughts or words?
Thank you for having me. First of all, this war against the virus is in the nature of a public good. So I enjoin everybody to just do your civic duty and act responsibly. Thank you.
Now it's time to move on to our next speaker, Mr. Francisco, who will be now introduced.
As the head of the investment banking group of Banco de Oro BDO Unibank, Mr. Eduardo Francisco serves as the president of BDO Capital and Investment Corporation, concurrently holding the post of chairman of both BDO Nomura Securities and Aviron Holdings Corporation. He is the current chairman of the International Association of Financial Executives Institutes, only the third Filipino to head the 51-year-old global organization, and sits on the board of several business, academic, alumni, and homeowners associations, such as the Development Center for Finance, CIBI Foundation, Phoenix Research and Foundation, International School of Manila, UP College of Business Alumni Association, Makati Sports Club, and Valle Verde Country Club. He is also a member of the Makati Business Club and the PLAT Biking Triathlon team. He is on the Capital Markets Committee of the Bankers Association of the Philippines and Philippine Stock Exchange, as well as the Listings Committee of the Philippine Dealing and Exchange Corporation. He is the former co-chairman of the Capital Market Development Council of the Philippines and vice chairman of the Integrity Initiative, and has been the president of the Management Association of the Philippines, Financial Executives Institute of the Philippines Institute, Wharton Pen Club, Federation of Valle Verde Associations, First Valle Verde Association, and BDO Securities Corporation. He was previously on the boards of AFC Merchant Bank in Singapore, Shareholders Association of the Philippines, Institute of Corporate Directors, Foundation for Filipino Entrepreneurs, LGU Guarantee Corporation, Investment Houses Association of the Philippines, Makati Business Development Council, and BDO Strategic Corporation. Mr. Francisco has worked with other financial institutions in New York and Hong Kong. He holds a master's degree in business administration from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania and a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of the Philippines. He is also a recipient of the Distinguished Alumnus Award of the UP College of Business Administration. He was recently honored by BizNews Asia as one of the Nation Builders and Asia Leaders Awards Mentor of the Year finalists. He also shares his knowledge and wisdom as a lecturer of the Ateneo de Manila University, Graduate School of Business, and the University of the Philippines.
Welcome, Mr. Francisco.
I have my presentation. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Dante, and thank you, Blanca, for inviting me. I'm always very honored, especially after having, I guess, Governor Ben and June Neri, because June and I have, I guess, even if we're in competing organizations, we work very well together. I have a 12-slide presentation. I hope the audience will allow me to go through some of the slides quicker, because some of these are repeats anyway of what was discussed earlier. So if I go to the next slide, I guess this is the underlying theme anyway, what's happening today. It's always been health versus livelihood. And I'll just go to the next slide on that. No, I don't want to even, I guess, comment on what the IATF, because Governor Ben is part of that. But I think the government has done the best it's could with the limited resources or the limited testing. So we have the longest lockdown, but even if there's a second wave, I think we have to be careful. But at the same time, we have to go out. I echo what their two previous speakers said. Unless we start going out and get more comfortable and reopen the business, then the investment climate will deteriorate, and we will not be the investment grade institution that government and the corporates will not do well. Even if Governor Ben has brought the policy rates to the lowest ever, people will not borrow. And I guess my value add to you, Dante, or the rest of the audience, is that I'm on the practitioner side. June is the economist, and then Governor is the policy and regulator. But we're seeing what's happening in the ground. And while rates have gone down, people will not borrow if they're not comfortable, and people won't spend if they think that there's going to be the pandemic is going to be prolonged. But the key anyway is that create is very important. I think we're hoping that the Congress and Senate pass this, because this will make us more competitive. There was a question earlier. It will make us more competitive because corporate taxes will go down. It will give some net loss carryover. It will also protect some of the longer investors here, give them sunset provisions for their reduction in their incentives. But that will make us more attractive and compete more with our peers. And that's good. So that will bring in more long-term investors in the Philippines. Arise also has many good provisions. This is related to the Joey Salceda and Stella Kimbo, what they've been talking about. At least me as a practitioner, what I just understand is that the DOF has some concerns because this Arise bill cost around 1.3 trillion. So it's it has a big impact on our finances. So I guess the DOF is just being a little careful, and I think it's fair. But one of the components of this Arise bill is an investment corporation, National Equity Investment Corporation, which will help also convert bad debts, and government will get a stake in that. The BAP also is looking at some of the restructuring. They have some concerns, but I guess you can leave it to the business organizations to review and to try to opine, because at least the business organizations, together with the foreign chambers, the local chambers, PCCI, we always work together. We come out with position papers, and at least we can echo and get some agreement. So that's the value add. And then I guess this last slide is important, because we as the Filipinos, as the taxpayers, you could say that there's really a lot of money that the government can still spend. They have fiscal space. We're in a way luckiest that we have been in the last few decades, because we have the highest rating so far. As mentioned, we've been upgraded by Japan. So while we have financial leeway, I think even before this arise 3 trillion is used, our debt to GDP will go up to 8 or 9%. So it's reaching the high side. So the question really is, what is the plan of the government? If they borrow money for this 1.3 trillion, it is true that many governments, or we can raise that money even from the local side to lend it to the government. But of course, we want the government to be able to use the money well and to be able to repay these debts. Otherwise, it will be a burden again to the next generation. Unless they're able to reopen, then they will not also be able to recover. So that's the challenge. I guess we want them to go out. We want people to go out to the malls. We want transportation. In fact, the last slide, I think even June Neri mentioned it, because what we're seeing is the malls are still relatively empty, because unless there's public transportation, even if on Wednesday we go from what are it now, GCQ to MGCQ. But if there's no public transportation, people are not going to go to the malls. People aren't going to eat in the restaurants. Because even now, under 30% sitting capacity, it's still empty. Because also people, I guess, are still a little concerned. Maybe they're just being conservative. Admittedly, if you want to invest, you invest in consumer staples. Governor Ben was joking about, yes, not investing in the high end maybe first, but then later that will come, right? But then on the other hand, there's a lot of good cheap equities. There are good bonds that you can invest in. The sweet spot today, the corporates are issuing a lot between 2 to 5 years. So you can get between 3 to 4% or even 5% maybe, hopefully. But because the government has brought the rates down, even investment rates are down, but these are very safe. And then I guess the economic managers have really done their best. So as long as there's us from the public sector, as there's speedy implementation and accountability, then they will be happy that they're being used. No? But the key really is 70% of the GDP comes from private consumption. So I guess even Ben had a good question. I think from the monetary board perspective, my personal view, they've done the best they can. So that's the monetary side. So it's really the fiscal side, and even June mentioned that. The fiscal side is really now taxes, what other stimulus programs are there. That's the one that will help businesses get back together. And I'm sure even Dante, when you're different, I guess reporters report, sometimes we have these. I guess these are the teething problems of LGUs interpreting laws differently from the national. But once those are all fixed, and once we buy more Filipino goods, and once people go out, because admittedly people are afraid, and even without the vaccine yet, then that will improve, and that will help in the recovery.
I have a question. You pointed out that there have been a couple of big writs finally, and that's good to see. That's been a long time coming, so it's good to see some activity in that. But a couple of times within just the last week, we have heard word of the POGOs starting to, a lot of them are starting to consider pulling out. And this is one thing that has worried a lot of people for a long time, that particular bubble may someday break, and we may be starting to see the beginnings of that. I kind of hope not for, other reasons, but, are you concerned about that? And if that happens, if say a dozen or 20 of the big POGOs pull out, under the circumstances we have now, can the real estate sector fill that hole?
Okay. Again, trying to answer your question, it will affect several parties, right? From the real estate developers, because if that's already sold anyway, it's really the problem of their buyers, right? So that there'll be a glut. Real estate prices might go down because people will try to sell. From the developers, they'll just really wait. They'll just wait for these to be sold. But then from the REIT perspective, these are usually offices anyway and not POGOs. And the big developers already limited their exposure to POGOs intentionally because they were wary of that anyway. So they're more protected. I think the ones who get more hurt are the individuals who bought properties, let's say, in near POGO areas, and then suddenly if they're Chinese tenants suddenly leave. They might be the ones getting hit, and if they borrowed money against that, they might have a problem finding a new tenant or restructuring. So we're hopeful that it won't be that fast, so it won't be as painful for the investors.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Francisco. I think we'd love to have you the whole afternoon, but I understand that you have some other things to address as well. But maybe if we can ask you some final words, maybe some parting thoughts.
Yeah, thank you again for inviting me. I'm still very hopeful for the Philippines, and that's why I've been here. I believe in our economic managers, but I think this really is really a PPP, a public-private partnership. The government is doing their part, but we as the Filipinos, the consumers, we have to do our part. So we have to spend to get everything restarted. Otherwise, we're not going to get out of this problem together. So we're in it together. So we sink or swim together. But I think with our fortitude and our love for family, we'll get through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francisco. Always very enlightening. Thank you. So with that, we'll move on to our next speaker, Mr. Paulo Azola, who will now be introduced.
Paulo is currently the Chief Operating Officer of Paymaya Philippines, the digital payments arm of Voyager Innovations. He graduated with a degree in International Relations at the London School of Economics. Prior to joining Paymaya, he was the Managing Director for Rocket Internet AG, where he was responsible for financial technology. He helped grow Rocket's influence in the alternative lending and mobile payments verticals, covering fundraising, idea generation, and acquisitions.
Welcome, Mr. Azola.
Hi, good afternoon.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm going to share a presentation if that's okay.
That's fine, sir. Thank you.
First of all, thank you so much for having me this afternoon. I look forward to giving you a few of the items that we've been doing over the last 4 months at Paymaya and how we see the world shaping up in what we like to call the new normal or the better normal in the company. Now, we've migrated into a world where earlier cashless was a nice to have. Today, cashless is really a necessity. We used to point to countries like Sweden where 90+% of transactions are cashless. And these were examples for us to follow. Now, far from a world where stores can only accept cash, which is the case in many cases here in the Philippines and other emerging markets, in Sweden, many stores accept only cashless. Now, this is not really the case here, but there is a catalyst now. If we can take this pandemic and turn it from the tragedy that it is, that it has been for so many people, into an opportunity to improve ourselves, as well as to improve the way that we interact, but also the way that we transact. This is one of the silver linings of this pandemic, and this will one day be described as a major milestone in the history of emerging markets and of this country specifically. So let's look at the three stakeholders of our economy. And you see them on the page, the icons at the bottom of this slide: the individual, the merchant or the business, and the government. And each stands to ultimately benefit from a world where cash is no longer king and where cashless is an absolute necessity. In fact, we have seen that occur in the real world over the last 3.5 months. From March 13th, when we're all living our work from office, spend cash, drive around freely life. Today, our life has changed a lot, and we've seen a strong and continuous growth across all of our businesses. So at Paymaya, we have three main pillars or three main businesses. The first one is our consumer wallet. The second one is our enterprise or merchant acquiring business. And the third one is our Smart Padala domestic remittance business. And across our total combined volume, we've seen a year-on-year growth. So from 2019 to 2020 of more than double in terms of volume and transactions. So very, very strong growth. And I think that the entire sector, not just in the Philippines, but in other countries, has also seen a strong growth in the same way. Now, on the consumer side, we've seen registrations grow extremely fast. The amount of registrations per month, the quality of those registrations, but also the amount of money being sent from one person to another, whether it's from a Paymaya user to another Paymaya user, whether it's from a Paymaya user to a bank account holder, whether it's from a bank account holder to a Paymaya user, we've seen that increase extremely heavily. And the same thing is true for airtime load top-up and other digital goods. So people in the Philippines are a vast majority on prepaid phones, and therefore, on a regular basis, of course, they're buying airtime load for their phone. But they're also buying other prepaid goods like utilities, like entertainment, and like many other items. And that has grown extremely significantly. I'll talk about it a little more later. The other item that we've seen on the consumer side really skyrocket has been online purchases. So less people can go into a store and make a purchase, but that doesn't mean that people don't need to buy things. And so we've seen that migrate from the physical world in cash, we've seen that migrate into the online world in digital money or in e-money. And that includes also the ability for people to pay using their mobile phone number, which is something that ourselves and other digital payments players have introduced over the last few months. Now, on the enterprise side, we've seen businesses, whether it's small businesses or large businesses, whether they are primarily online or whether they are primarily face-to-face, all of them have seen a very strong increase in the ability to accept other forms of payments than cash. And not just the ability, but also the use of other forms of payments than cash. So that means that credit card payments, digital wallet payments, even foreign wallet payments have increased very significantly. And that's true of both what used to be in-store payments as well as in e-commerce payments. Now, I'd say there are two main phases that we have seen so far in terms of which merchants have really moved over from the cash-heavy world to the cash-less world. And that's in the first phase, from March 14th onwards for the next month. People really needed to go to grocery stores, to pharmaceuticals vendors like drugstores, and a few other sectors that were really seeing very, very heavy volumes throughout the initial part of our community quarantine. Now that in the second phase, which started probably towards the end of April, when e-commerce started coming back into play, when people were able to go out of their homes a little bit more, and of course that increase has continued in June, we've seen sectors like obviously QSRs, quick service restaurants, people needing to buy food for themselves, transport and logistics, people and packages going faster and faster around the country. So the radical shift to cashless that we've seen over the community quarantine period, the first wave of it, we've seen that it's forced out of necessity. Now, what this means is that there was already beforehand a digital transformation that was underway even pre-lockdown, but it was in a much slower and in a less concerted way. Whether it was that some sectors were adopting it and others weren't, whether it was that some parts of the country were adopting it more heavily and others were not, it was quite a disjointed effort. Now what we've seen is that all segments, all sectors across the board have seen the first wave really come out of necessity during the pandemic. And that is out of necessity to avoid isolation. Now, the second wave, which we define as policy-driven necessity, this is similar to the first wave, but it has a driving force and an influence from policy, from government. And I'll go through it in a couple of slides. The third wave really is where it isn't just out of necessity. It isn't just out of policy, but it is that people, we predict, will have a preference for cashless. If you get into a habit of doing something that is easier, potentially cheaper for you, and less time consuming, on a long-term basis, that creates a habit that I think across the entire country will have a snowball effect. Now,
we started off very near the beginning of this whole afternoon with Governor Jokno talking about the importance of ICT infrastructure, and obviously that is an issue that lands right in your lap. So what is your feeling on that? What needs to be done? What kind of obstacles are you running into? Because without connectivity, you're dead in the water, and so is everybody else trying to use your services. So what can you suggest to help push that along?
That's a great question, and it's a question that I think is on many people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, I'm looking at it not as a snapshot today, but as a progression. If I remember 6 years ago when I stepped onto this soil for the first time, it was a lot more difficult to engage in a phone conversation or in a video conversation at the time than it is today. Today, I can easily watch a YouTube video while I'm as a passenger in my car in EDSA. I can easily make a video call using LTE. At the time, it was much more difficult. So on the one hand, I'm more satisfied today than I was 5 or 6 years ago with where we are in terms of telecommunications. On the other hand, there's of course a big part of the population that still requires access to connectivity. Now, the way that we've seen it is, if connectivity comes, and if it comes for everyone across the entire country, we'll be great recipients of it. But we're not just holding our breath and looking at it that way. We've also decided that the people in the population who have access to a smartphone, who are connected, who have access to, who want to be able to make a financial transaction on a mobile phone and are comfortable doing that, these people will be able to use our application on their smartphone. But for those people who are not perhaps as fortunate, might not have a smartphone, might not have a connectivity, might not be comfortable making a financial transaction on their mobile phone, for those people, our network of 30,000 Smart Padala stores or centers across the entire country, and as I mentioned earlier, it covers 92% of the municipalities in the country, that is their lifeline to be able to engage in financial transactions. So I can go to my local barangay store and have similar access to what a smartphone holder has on their mobile phone. And of course, we want everyone to be able to have the convenience and the speed of a mobile phone or a smartphone. But in the absence of it, we've created this fantastic network that enables people, everyone, to have the same level of access to financial services. We are governed by the BSP, right? So we are a BSP financially supervised institution, or BSFI. My knowledge of other government institutions, agencies, is more superficial. It's more about providing support to them from a payments perspective. So I will talk mainly about BSP, not about the other ones. Okay. When it comes to BSP, our relationship with them has always been one of trying to make sure that if a new policy comes out, it's supportive of our long-term vision also. It's a symbiotic relationship. When we pioneered the ability to sign up using your mobile phone, to go through a KYC or Know Your Customer onboarding experience for individuals directly on the mobile phone, this was probably 5 years ago. When we pioneered this, the BSP was extremely supportive about this. And we were able to launch it in partnership with BSP precisely because of that. It's something that it's the first time that it was done in the country. And of course, now it's helped a lot of other institutions adopt the same technology. The adoption of cloud technology, for example, so that we don't have to hold everything that we do on-premise or on physical servers is something that BSP has spearheaded over the last 3 or 4 years. What that has enabled is more, obviously, cheaper way for us to store and to run our platforms. But at the same time, it's enabled us to be much faster in processing transactions and in servicing our customers. That's something that we've done in a symbiotic relationship with BSP. I cannot recall a single item or request that I had for BSP that made sense, was technology enabled, and that they rejected. So I think the resounding answer is that they are very, very supportive of anything that makes sense, of course, that is secure, but at the same time that enables people across the country, businesses across the country, and government across the country to perform better. So I'm very, very happy with our relationship with them, and I know that the industry as a whole probably is too. One last point about that is I've worked in other countries in the past, and I did not see the same level of interaction between institutions or banks and non-banks and the regulator. So we're in a very unique position here, and we're in a very unique situation, and we can't wait to bring more fantastic services to customers.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Zola.
Thank you.
Like you said, we have to now go out and do our part. And if I were going to add something, just wear your mask and keep your distance. So with that, thank you everyone for watching this episode of the Manila Times Business Forum. Until next time, this is Dante Ang. Thank you once again from all of us.